Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Soul Sister Speaks. My name is Jemai. I'm your host, and I have the special privilege and honor of being seated next to the one and only Madam Kim Walker. Miss Kim, do you mind introducing yourself?
Not at all. My name is Kim Walker. I am a native Austinite.
Wow.
Lived here since I was 7. I've been in ministry in some capacity for probably about 30 years.
Yeah.
And in full-time ministry for 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
If you could describe your last 30 years of ministry experience, sum it up in 3 personal words, what would they be?
Life-changing. Just absolute transformation. So transformation being one. A blessing. It's been fulfilling to be able to help others, to use the things that God's brought me through over the years to give others hope. I was a pretty angry person for a long time. I didn't trust. I carried bags of shame with me. I mean, just bags of shame. I couldn't look into people's eyes. And it's been a gradual healing of all of that. You put that spiritual mirror in front of your face and you may see something that scares you to death and you're just like, I can't fix all that.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that God doesn't expect you to fix all that. He just wants you to come and admit to Him, lay down who you are at His feet, and He gradually works within you to heal all of those wounds.
Practically, what does that look like? And how do we also overcome the shame based off your expertise of God revealing things to us that we didn't even know were there, and then having to lay them at His feet, but then also wait and be patient as He carves those things away from us?
Well, I think with regard to the shame, there was a particular moment in my life when I realized that God loves me so much and that He doesn't see any of that. None of it. It's all covered in His blood. It's gone. As far as the east is from the west, it's gone. Depths of the oceans. So those are all scriptures that I memorized in the process of that healing, and then going through a study of who God sees you, who God says you are, and completing that and realizing God created me to be me, specifically, individually, unique. And the things that He brought me through that caused shame, once you can remove that shame, rise above that shame, you realize how it has influenced who you are, who God has made you to be. They tell you that God gives you certain trials and that each trial, each thing that you go through makes you stronger. And I can totally testify to that. Each one, you don't see it when you're in it, but once you get over it and move past it, and you can look back and go, I see what you did there, God.
Yeah. Wow. And so I think that would be the perfect transition into what this episode essentially is about. One, of course, your story, but also Sali. The Lord is my strength. The Lord is my rock. What has been your testimony in your experience with Sali, the Lord, our strength, and the Lord, our rock?
Well, He's shown that to me throughout different seasons of my life. But most recently, in September of 2021, my husband, who I just love dearly, he was a magnificent man of God, just loved him, was diagnosed with cancer. And at the time he was diagnosed, they're giving you hope and all that stuff, but I knew. It was like God told me that he wasn't going to be here long. I cried, I was angry, cried some more. But ultimately, having that time to care for my husband, to grieve him while he was still alive, but to celebrate the life that we had together. On our anniversary, the year before he passed, I took him to all of the spots, past the house that he lived in when we first met, the restaurant that he proposed in, the Hoovers that we met in, which is a whole nother story. So just being able to have that opportunity to lean on God, to realize that God has given me this foundation. My faith is built on rock. It's not built on sand. So as long as I am embracing that, I'm going to be okay. And then another aspect of it was, you're not alone. And I don't mean that, I knew God was with me, but I was not alone. I had people that wanted to be a part of this journey, that wanted to walk alongside me. And if I didn't share with them all the details of what was going on, they wouldn't have been able to do that. And that blessed me so much. Vulnerability, allowing myself to be vulnerable, to fight against our culture that's very private, that keeps things in the house, and just putting it out there and just letting people know, when I'm having bad days, things that I'm scared about, things that I'm feeling. I just put it out there, and people poured into me during that time. And all of those were God-created relationships. And God was my strength. On the days that I felt the weakest, that I just couldn't go on, I would just pray. I would pray and pray and pray. There's a verse that I read quite a bit. It's from Psalms 46, and it says, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though the waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with surging. There is a river whose stream make glad the city of God, a holy place where the Most High dwells, a holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at break of day. So every day, just remembering that no matter what I'm going to go through, whatever I'm going to experience through that day, that God is there. He's my rock. He's my strength. He's carrying me through all of it. My husband passed in our house April 13th of last year. And I'm not lying. I was tore up for quite a while. I was mad at God for a while. But just like your relationship with your parents, they do something, you don't understand why they did it. Yeah. And you're mad at them, but that doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that you want to leave them. It doesn't mean that they're mad at you. It just is a process of shaping and forming you into what God intends you to ultimately be. He went through a series of chemo. There was that, little bit of hope. Not for me, it wasn't that he was going to go into remission, that the cancer would be healed. It was that it might extend his time here with me more. And so I think that was where I felt the hopelessness, was this is not working. God's going to take him, and he's going to take him soon. I'm not ready for this. That's where the hopelessness comes in. But with my relationship with God, as solid as it is, there was always that still small voice, always, of you're going to be all right, Kim. You're going to be all right. Yeah. And even my husband, that was his biggest fear. He didn't care about anything else except for whether or not I was going to be all right. So me having to reassure him, regularly that I was going to be all right, helped with that hopelessness. Mm-hmm. I'm a pretty strong, independent woman, and he knows that. So just knowing that I'm going to be devastated, but I'm going to heal. Mm-hmm. I will fall, but I will not be crushed.
You making mention of you being a strong, which I can tell you are, and an independent woman, yet understanding the limits of our strength as human beings. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what it was like to understand that limitation and then to lean on the strength of God, understanding that it's okay that there's a limit because God's strength is limitless.
Right. I can recall many, many, many times that I would go into my room and shut the doors and just cry to God, telling him, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And always hearing God say, no, you can't. But with me, I can do all things through you. So it was like, okay, I have a helper. I have something. As long as I stay plugged into God, I have that strength that is fresh every day, mercies that are fresh every day. And I definitely dug into that every day.
So with human beings, we can only come to people so many times before they're like, okay, you're calling again.
Right.
You know,
Right.
all right.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain how that's just not the case with God? Because something I've come to realize with, depending on, I guess like the duration of someone's spiritual walk, if they spent more time in the presence of people than God, sometimes it's possible to like project what we know of people onto God and feel like, okay, I've called upon God for strength for 34 days. Surely there has to be a day where when I call, maybe he won't answer. So do you have anything that you can say regarding that?
I think it kind of goes back to that shame. When we deal with people and we ask for help, or we feel like we're a burden to somebody, that burden is caused by shame. We're ashamed of the situation that we're in. We're ashamed of being needy. We're ashamed of even having to ask. And so when we ask, 4 or 5 times for the same thing, or even from, different things from the same person, if we're thinking about God that way, it's a totally messed up experience, because he's God and his mercies are new every day. So it's not like I don't ever feel like I can't ask him for the same thing today as I did yesterday, which is good, because I do ask him pretty regularly for the same thing today as I asked him for yesterday. But just knowing that every day is fresh and that he wants me to come to him. I'm his child. He wants me to sit on his lap and, tell him, Daddy, can you get me a glass of water? Even though I've asked for a glass of water 5 million times. That's his desire for our relationship with him.
And you talked about how early in, because I feel like there's a connection, you talked about how you came to understand that God really loves you. Do you think your ability to come relentlessly and boldly before God, asking for the same thing 5 million times, comes from the place of knowing how much he loves you?
Absolutely. I had an experience. There are times in your life where you have experiences where you know that you're in the presence of God. You hear him talking to you, like audibly hear him talking to you. And I was worshiping in the back of a church one day. I was just in it. I was deep in it. And I heard God saying, that feeling that you have when you fall in love, where your hands are sweaty and you can't eat, you can't think about anything else, that your whole life is just ruined because you can't think of anything but that love. I'm like, oh, okay. He said, I love you billions of times more than that. And I just broke down. And at that point, I was able to completely accept his love. So I think that's part of it, is when you've accepted his immense love for you, you don't feel any shame of going to him. You don't feel any shame of the mistakes that you make. You don't feel any shame for, having needs. You don't feel any shame for being mad at him when he does something you don't like. It removes that shame, because for him to love you that much, to love you thousands times more than your parents can love you, totally unconditionally. It's the epitome of unconditional.
From that point, have you been able to see and experience God's love even in the midst of tragic circumstances?
Yeah. Part of it was when my husband passed. It was tragic. I hurt. But I did feel the whole time that God was there, that he was comforting me, that he was caring for me, that he was providing for me. Feeling God's love, like not just thinking it, not even it being an emotion, they say a lot of times it's when your brain gets to your heart, travels to your heart. It's just that, 12 inches of distance that makes a difference. To really have that love embedded in me helped me to know that God's always going to be there, and that he loves me more than Skip ever loved me, which is a hard shoe to fill because Skip loved me, but that God loves me more than he did, and that I don't have to go throughout my day not feeling like I'm loved because Skip's gone, but feeling his love consistently and constantly.
In the beginning of the episode, you talked about how sometimes God will bring us through trials and tribulations to transform us into who he's called us to be. Have you seen God, or how have you seen God use this for your good and also to draw you closer to who he knows you to be?
When I was a new Christian, I did the spiritual gift assessments, okay? And it came out pretty much based on my answers, pretty much how I expected it to be. No surprises. But the second part of this was to have a mentor, somebody who had walked alongside you for a period of time, answer questions about you, and to see the difference in how other people see you versus how you see yourself. And my mentor at the time, Debbie, gave me her results, and the primary gifts were faith and leadership.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm like, are you crazy? I mean, I barely had a mustard seed of faith at that point. I was so new. And leadership, I hated being anywhere near standing up in front of people. I'd always been the one that was like, people want to come along, fine. And people did. I just never understood why they did. So as I grew, as my relationship with God grew, and I realized that my faith is my strongest gift. That no matter what happens, I have faith that God is going to be there, even in the midst of what seems like total destruction. I have faith that God is, his hand is in all of it, even though I can't see it. So I think that it's just that, being able to look at the things that you've gone through, look back on the things that you've gone through, and being able to see how they've made you who you are meant to be. I have a lot of influence that I never thought I would ever have. And because of that, so many of my experiences, being in an abusive marriage, being divorced, being a single mom, being a mom of somebody that's disabled, drugs, alcohol, abortion, all of those things. There's so many of them that formed me to be who that I am, but not so that I could keep it to myself, but so that I could share it with other people and give them hope in the circumstances that they're going through, to try to offer them healing during that time, because I've walked this path, and I can see where you're walking, and I can feel what you're going through as you're walking.
Is there anything that you feel on your heart, any last words that you would like to speak to anybody who could be in a similar circumstance, or anybody who's watching that needs a word of encouragement for this, for the current season that they're in?
Regarding grief, I think everybody needs to know that everybody grieves differently. that the way you grieve is not the way that somebody else is grieved, that your timeline is not somebody else's timeline. And you have to allow God to heal you in His time. That was one thing that I didn't realize when I started this, how horrible grief is. That feeling like I'll never be happy again. I'll never be happy again. And then as you get to the point where you're starting to feel a little happiness, feeling guilty for being happy. Does that mean that I didn't love my husband? You know, that I'm enjoying my day to day when I should be sad. And just learning that it's okay. That it's possible to be very happy and very sad at the exact same time. So definitely get counseling. Definitely talk to people. Don't let your grief be something that you do at home alone in the dark, because you can't heal in the dark. Talk to people. Be vulnerable.
Amen. Thank you so much once again for joining us. This was such a special moment for me, as I've been chasing you for some months now, but I thank God for His perfect timing.
Absolutely.
And I thank God for your life, just your willingness to share your stories and allow it to not be something that you reserve, but that you freely use as a blessing to others. And I can tell there's like a lack, like your relentlessness about that being a part of your purpose in life. And so I thank you so much for stewarding everything that God has allowed you to go through, and for allowing Him to use it for a greater purpose. And so I hope that you all enjoyed this episode. I know that it was such a blessing to myself and so many others. You all, this is episode 6 of Soul Sister Speaks, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.
Tell about the healer. Greater is the one within, and call him as the leader. Teach her how to hold a pretty hand up to the sky. Never wait upon the giver, he'll deliver like a dealer. To take her higher.